So this must be, so this must be, yeah, so this must be here. The edge is the Shabbat. Okay.
Okay, we are possibly live.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? So you have what you need to hold.
So Joy did want to ask something about no, about Micah's girlfriend's family.
Yeah.
The Gerard. Still the Gerard. I don't know. I don't think she knows. But there was something he wanted to ask.
Yeah, all this vitamin C. You know, we have many careers, so spread out and all that for time.
Said I was going to move towards the crowd. Huh? Move closer to the people. I have like 5 layers on.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
You do, it's
But I didn't bring my gloves.
I have. Hello.
Shalom to you.
Shalom.
One more minute or so. Hope everyone's doing well.
And you were traveling, huh? What, you get jet lag from that, or you don't have that going?
Yeah. Now, did you travel to Florida to help bring him back?
I mean, yeah, but he didn't need any help. I just got
So he was in there for that.
yeah,
He's
and
back.
my brother also lives there, and so you know, it's a fun trip.
Yeah.
And everything.
Down to the-
Yeah, it's hard to New Jersey at her niece's 316.
Okay. She's a good aunt. She's really been traveling back there quite a bit.
So, all right, friends.
Thank you for being here. Welcome. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom to all who may be watching virtually as well, from wherever they are. We are even at a minyan already. We are going to begin on page 73 with our morning blessings. Please rise. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, אשר נתן לך שפי, בינה להבחין בין יום ובין לילה. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, שעשני בצלמו. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, שעשני ישראל. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, שעשני בן חורים. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, פוקח עבריים. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, מביש ארמיים. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, מתיר אסורים. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, תוקף כפופים. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, מרכר ארץ על מים. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, שעשה לכל צורכי. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, במחים צדיק גבר. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, עוזר ישראל בגבורה. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, מטה ישראל בתפארה. ברוך אתה ה' למחלה, הנותן לעייף כוח. We may be seated. Page 134. Hallelujah, 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 Bekosho, hallelujah, hallelujah, Berkia Uzo, hallelujah, 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 big Vurotav, hallelujah, hallelujah, Kerov Gudo, hallelujah, 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 Betega Shofar. Hallelu, hallelu, v'nevel v'chinor. Hallelujah, 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 betov umachor. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'minim ve'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 b'tziltzalei shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, b'tziltzalei truah. Kol hanishamate hallelujah, kol hanishamate hallelujah, kol hanishamate hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol hanishamate hallelujah, hallelujah. Page 143. Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shimcha. On 147. Yitmelach, umi yishvelach, umi yarof lach. Ha'elagad gvora elayim kol shamayim va'aretz. Nalelcha shmecha chanefercha nevrech et shem kodshecha. Kamor levi barchin eshet Adonai. V'chok rabbi et shem kodsheho. Ayel b'tatzimot uzecha, gadol b'kvod shemecha. Al gibor lenetzach v'rotecha. Melech HaYoshev al Kisei Ram Benitzah. We're going to be on page 149 for Shachri. We invite college student Jonah Bloom to, and in exchange for tuition, room, and board, he will be leading us in Shachri today.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Shochenad Maram V'kadosh Shemo V'chatuv Ranenu Tzadikim Ba'adonai Le'sharim Navat Tehila B'fi Yisharim Tithalal U'divrei Tzadikim Tibarach U'vilsham Chasidim Titromam U'vkerev Kedoshim Titkadash U'machalo Rivevod Amcha Be'Yisrael Night Barshim Chamakenu Bechodor Bador Shekin Chovat Kol Hayatzarim Lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu Velahei Avotenu Lehodot Lehalel Leshabeach Lefaer Lerumen Lehader Levarech Lealeo Kales Al Kol Divrei Shira Batishbacho David Ben Yishai Abdecha Meshichecha Yishkabach Shimcha Le'ad Malkeinu. Brachot ve'odot me'ata ve'ad olam Baruch atah Adonai El Melech Gadol Batishbachot El ha'oda'ot Adon ha'nifla'ot Habocher v'shirei zimra Melech Elchei ha'olamim Yikadal ve'yikadash Shemei Rabbi Ve'almad yivrach yiruteh V'yamlich malchuteh V'chayechon u'yomechon V'chayedecho be'Yisrael V'agalav yizman kariv V'imeru
Amen. Yehi Shemra Barach Ve'olam Ve'omaya
Yivarach ve'yishtabach Ve'yitvar ve'yitramam ve'yinaseh Ve'yitadar ve'yitaled Ve'yitalal Shemei Dekudesha Brichu Ve'ela mikol birchata v'shirata Tishbechata v'nechemata Damiran be'alma ve'imru Amen.
Please rise for the Baruch Hu, page 152.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed.
Seated.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotzer or u'vorei choshech Osei shalom u'vorei et hakol. Ein kerkecha ve'ein zulatecha Efes piltecha umi domelach Ein kerkecha ve'ein zulatecha Efes piltecha umi domelach Ein kerkecha Adonai Eloheinu b'olam hazeh Ve'ein zulatecha mokinu chayei olam haba Efes piltecha golenu limot HaMashiach Ve'ein domelecha moshienu litchiyat ha'mitim El Adon al kol ha'masim Baruch hu borach b'fi kol neshama Betuva malei olam Ta'ad u'vuna sod b'bimoto HaMikael chayot HaKodesh v'neder b'chavod al ha'merkava Zechutu mishor lifnei chiso Chesed v'rachamim lifnei chirodo Me'orot shemara Eloheinu Yitzaram Be'da'at be'bina u'fasker Koach u'gvura Natan bahem Li'ol moshlim be'kerev tevel Meleim ziv u'mfikim Noganai zivam bechol ha'olam Tzumechim b'teitam B'sasim be'voam Osim be'em ha'ritzon kronam Chavod notim lishmot Zohar Verina lezecher malchuto Kara Lashemesh vayizrach or Ra'avihin tzurat havana Shevach notim lo Kol tzeva marom Tiferet ugedula Serafim ve'ofanim ve'chayot HaKodesh Ayah Shabbat Kol HaMasim. Titbarach Tureinu Malkeinu V'Goaleinu Borei Kedoshim Yishalach Shimcha Le'ad Malkeinu V'echtulam Portim Et Bihem B'Kedusha U'Torah V'Shira U'Zimra U'Marchim U'Mshabchim Farim U'Maritzim U'Makdishim U'Mamlichim Et Shema El HaMelech L'Kol HaGibor V'Hanorah Kadosh Kaplim alehem u'malchut shemayim ze mizeh v'nonim reshut ze ela zeh le'akdish le'otram b'nachat ruach b'safa v'rurav v'nima kedusha kulam kecharonim ve'omrim be'yirah Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvaot v'vorat kevodo ve'halfanim v'chayot HaKodesh v'rash gadol mitnasim lemat Serafim le'matam meshavchim ve'omrim Baruch Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir v'nizkech ulanu meher alei aro Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer ha'me'orot Ahava Rabbah Tanu Adonai Eloheinu V'chem lagidol ha'b'tera Kamata aleinu Avinu Malkeinu, Ba'ur Avotenu, Shebatchu Becha, Avinu Malkeinu, Vatelamdem Chukei Chaim, Ken Techonenu Lamdenu, Avinu HaVarachaman, Hamrachem Rachem Aleinu, V'ten B'libenu Lehavinu Haskil Lishmoa, Lilmod U'Melamed, Lishmor V'Lasod, U'Kayem Ekol Divrei Talmud Toratecha V'Ahava, V'Ha'erinenu B'Toratecha, V'Ta'abek Libeinu B'Mitzvotecha, V'Yached Levavenu Le'ahava U'Yira Et Shemecha, V'Lo Nevosh Le'olam Va'ed, V'Lo Nevosh Le'olam Va'ed, Ki V'Shem Kodshecha Hagadol V'Hanora V'Hatachnu, Nagila v'nismecha b'yeshuatecha, v'hamienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz, v'tolichenu komemiyu le'atzenu, ki elpo el yeshuotata, Ubanu b'charta mikolam v'lashon, v'keraftanu l'shimcha hagadol, zela b'yemek, v'hodol lecha, u'yachecha b'ahava. Baruch atah Adonai, Ocher b'amu Yisrael b'ahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavecha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol me'odecha, v'hayu advarim ha'ele, asher anochi metzavecha, Hayom alevavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta ba'am, v'shivtecha u'beitecha, u'vlechtecha b'derech, u'b'shochrecha u'b'kumecha, u'b'shortam le'od al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'v'yisharecha. Leman tizkeru ve'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'yitem kedoshim le'lechem, ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem Elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem. Amen. Adonai Elohechem, amen. Ledor vador hu kayam u'shmo kayam v'chiso nachon malchuto v'emunato le'ad kayamet u'dvarav chayim v'kayamim. Emet She'atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Malkeinu Melech Avotenu Go'aleinu Go'el Avotenu Yotzreinu Tzor Yeshuatenu Vodenu Matulenu Milam Shemecha Ein Elohim Zulatecha Ezrat Avotenu Atahu Me'olam. Atahu Rishon ve'atahu Acharon U'mibaladecha en lanu melech go'el u'moshiach. Tehilot le'elyon baruch u'mvorach Moshe v'nei Yisrael echanu sherabi simcha rabba ve'amru chulam Mi kamocha b'elim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh Norati lo no sefele Norati lo no sefele Shira chadasha shichu ge'ulim Leshimcha al sfatayam Yachad v'lam hodu ve'imlihu ve'amru Adonai lo le'olam va'ed Tzur Yisrael Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael Uvtei chenumecha Yehuda be'Yisrael Go'aleinu Adonai tzevot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch Atah Adonai Gal Yisrael.
Private Amidah, pages 175 to 192. All right, repetition of the Amidah back on page 175.
Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi agin tehilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah El Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chastei Avot U'Mevi Goel Livnei V'Nehem Le'mat Shemo Be'ahalva Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham U'Fokei Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayei Metim Atah Rav Le'Moshiach Shiva Ruach U'Morid HaGashem Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed Mechayei Metim V'Rachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim U'Matir Asurim U'Mekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Ba'al Kiburo Umido Melach Melech Memitu Mechayei U'Matzmiach Yeshua V'Ne'eman Atalech Chayot Mitim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayei HaMeitim Nikadesh et Simcha ba'olam Keshem shematishim Oto b'shmei marom Kakatuv al yad neviecha V'karazel zeh ve'amar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzevaot Melocho ha'aretz Kevodo Az b'kol rash gadol Adir v'chazak mashmi'in kol Minasim leumat serafim Leumatam baruch yom v'meru Baruch kevod Adonai Mimkom chamalkeinu Tofi avitim lachaleinu Mimechakim Anavnu lach Matai timloch b'tzion Bekarov b'yamin le'lam ba'et tishkon Tikadol v'tikadash B'toch Yerushalayim yurcham L'dor v'ador U'lenetzach netzachim V'einenu tirena Malchutecha Kadavar Hamur V'shirei uzecha Al yedei David Mishiach tzidkecha Yimloch Adonai le'olam Elohai Tzion L'dor v'ador Alleluia L'dor v'ador nagid godlecha U'lenetzach netzachim k'nishaktecha Nakdish v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu le'mosh le'olam va'ed Ki hamelech gadol v'kadosh atah Baruch atah Adonai Shema'el HaKadosh
Yismach, 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 Moshe b'matnah, 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 Chelko, Yived, Ne'eman, Aratalo, Yismach, 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 Moshe b'matnah, 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 Chelko, Yived, Ne'eman, Ne'eman, Karatalo. שנה תתאבם, לפניך אחרי סיני, ושלא תכל אבנים בריא, בידך וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת, וכן כתוב בתורתך. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות הברית עולם, בנים ובני ישראל תילי עולם, כי 12 לשמיים ולארץ, ויום השביעי שבת ויהי נחש. לא נתתור עלינו לגוי רצות ולא חינכותו מלכין עליו דפסילים וגם לחתו לישכינו ערלים ישראל עמך נתתו באהבה לזרע יעקב אשר בם בחרת מקדשי שבי שבת כולם יסברו ויתענגו מטובך שבת והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת חמדת ימים אותו קראת זכר למעשה בראשית אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו רצה במנוחתנו קדשנו במצוותיך ותן חלקנו בתורתך שמנו מטובך ושמחנו בישועתך לטהר ליבנו לעבדך באמת והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה ורצון שבת קודשך בנבואה ישראל מקדשי שמך ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל וביא תפילתם בשפר עבודה לדבר ביתך ואישי ישראל ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ברצון ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך ותחזינה עינינו ושובך לציון ברחמים ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון מודים אנחנו לך תפחילו חלו רחמך ומרחם כאילו עמו חסדך מעולם קיווינו לך יעקב המדברת ירומם שמך מכיר תמיד לעולם ועד חיים ידוך הסלע ולורד שמך ואמר על ישועתנו בעזרתנו סלע ברוך אתה אדוני עתו שמך לכנה להודות אלוהינו ולאבותינו ברכינו בברכה משולשת בתורה קרא על ידי משה עבדך אמורה מפי אהרון ובניו כהנים עמו קידושך כאמור יברך עליו וישמרך ירנה פניו אליך ויחונך ישא פניו אליך וישם לך שלום שים שלום טובה וברכה חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך ברכנו אבינו כולנו כאחד באור פניך כי באור פניך נתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו שים שלום בעולם טובה וברכה חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך תורת חיים באהבת חסד וצדקה וברכה ורחמים בחיים בשלום שים שלום בעולם טובה וברכה חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה לשלומך ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום קדיש לב, page 193
יגדל ויקרא שמי רבה ועמד יברכר וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ובמלכות חיי לכל בית ישראל בגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו
אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולם לעולמיה יתברך
יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר Bit Ramam Bit Naseh Bit Adar Bit Ale Bit Allah Shemeda Kudisha
Barichu.
Leilami Kol Berchata V'Shirata Tush Berchata V'Nechemata Tamiran Be'Alma V'imeru
Amen.
Mos Lo Tachonu V'Tachonu Chol Yisrael Kodama V'Honi V'Ishmaya V'imeru
Amen.
Yehi Shalom Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chayim Aleinu Ve'Al Kol Yisrael V'imeru
Amen.
Oseh Shalom B'Marav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'Al Kol Yisrael V'imeru
Amen. Yashkoah. Thank you so much, Jonah. All right, page 195, the Torah service. He did not forget how to lead. That's because I imagine he's leading every week at Hillel or Chabad or something. Like I say, I'm imagining. All right, 195. And if the ark openers want to come up. And, Obi, why don't you carry the Torah? Are you all right? You're right? Yeah. You okay to carry it? No, not today? Okay. Just keep your shoulder healthy. So, Michael Rose, come on up. How about? Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai ve'ein kema'asecha malchut lecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai oz le'amo yitain Adonai yivarech betano v'shalom avarachamim ekiva bertzoncha et Zion tivnei homot Yerushalayim tivnei homot Yerushalayim Yirecha levad v'tachnu melech el Ramanisa Adon Olamim. Vayivin Zoharon vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai ve'afutu oilecha ve'anusu bisanecha mipanecha ki mitzion tetzei Torah ki mitzion tetzei Torah u'devar Adonai b'Yerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amot Yisrael B'kedushat Torah Ve'anarachet Le'lishmei Kadisha Kadisha Yakira Anane Bartut Behan Yarei Rava Kodama Betita Libi Beoraita Betashli Mishalin Delibi Deliba Decholama Yisrael Letanu Lechaim Belishva Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Gadol Shemo. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Gadol Shemo. Adonai Iti. Can I, if people promise not to touch and kiss it? Can we have Michael walk all the way through, like a traditional hakafa? I know it's tempting, but I'd love to see hakafa. Here we go. Adonai, Amam Lacha, Leha Minaseh Lechol Lerosh Romamu, Adonai Eloheinu, Vehishtachavu, Lehadam Raglav Kadoshu, Romamu, Adonai Eloheinu, Vehishtachavu, Lehar Kosho, Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Yashakoach, we may be seated. We'll have to experiment with that, if that's doable for people or not. Kind of like you can just sort of hold up your talit, like you had an aliyah, or rather, like you didn't have an aliyah, when during Hagban Galila. Maybe we'll start that. I like seeing the Torah walking around the room. All right. We are going to turn to page, I think it's 228, maybe? No. 283. Parashat Vayigash, chapter 46, verses 28 through 30. This part of the triennial is mostly about the Jews settling in one particular place within Egypt, the territory of Goshen. And so that's what we're going to be seeing throughout it. It's also, there's a lot about Jacob, of Yaakov, Israel, in this portion. He basically is so relieved now that he has seen Joseph still alive and well. He's really ready to die. He was sort of working toward that point. He's tired, but he can now die in peace. So the first Aliyah, chapter 46, verses 28 through 30. And we're going to call upon David Goodwin for our first Aliyah, our Cohen, and Rabbi Eric Gould is reading the Torah for the first several passages today.
You do your thing.
Serving and Yoshia the Palachosim Bolinamar, Amen. Akol Habugod Elohenu to do the Torah Kohen, Kerab Yamod, David ben Hanania HaKohen, Baruch Shenatan Torah Moishel Bikdusha, Tov Yatem Hadekim Baranai Elohechem, Chaim Kolchem Hayom.
Baruch Adonai HaVarach,
Baruch
Amen. Yehuda shalach lefanav Yosef u'horot lefanav Goshna vayavo arza Goshen vayisor Yosef mirkavto vayal likar Yisrael aviv Goshna vayira'ela vayipol tavarav vayif'al tavarav Vayomer Yisrael El Yosef Amud hapam achareroti panecha ki orchafai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech asher natan lanu Torah v'netachayil lanu natan l'tachayil baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yashakoach. The second Aliyah, chapter 46, verses 31 through 34, they have a plan. Joseph has a plan so that they will get to stay in Goshen. And we'll be talking more about this a little bit later. Basically, tell Pharaoh we're shepherds. And Egyptians think shepherds are gross. So, therefore, they will work out well for both parties. 31 through 34. We call upon Sid Levi, our Levi Aliyah.
Yamod Zvi Ben Hirsch Leib Halevi.
Oh.
Wait.
Wait.
Baruch Adonai HaBarak.
Baruch Adonai
Baruch Adonai HaBarak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher Karvanu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torto. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Yosef Elechav Yel Beit Aviv Elev Agir Lefaro V'Omra Elav Achai Beit Aviv Asher Be'eretz Canaan Ba'u Elai Va'anashim Ro'ei Tzon Ki Anshe Mikneh Hayu V'tzonam Ukaram V'chol asher lahem heviyu V'haya ki yikra lachem Paro v'amar ma ma'asechem V'amartem Anshe mikneh Hayu avadecha min oreinu va'ad ata gam anachnu gam avotenu ba'avur teshuvu be'eretz Goshen ki to'avat Mitzrayim kol ro'ei tzon.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher Notan Lanu Torah Emet V'Chaye Olam Notan Mesageno. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Yashikoah.
Yashikoah, David.
Third Aliyah, chapter 47, verses 1 through 6. Marty is commemorating Yortzeit today. This is now exactly what they said was going to happen, which is they tell Pharaoh they're shepherds and he lets them settle in Goshen.
Yamod Moshe Ben Nachman Be'eser Lefot Shlishi.
Baruch Adonai HaBarak.
Baruch
Baruch Adonai HaBarak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher b'karbanu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Amen. Vayave Yosef v'gid lefaro vayomer aviv achai b'tzonam u'karam v'chol asher lahem ba'u be'eretz Canaan v'hinam be'eretz Goshen ומקצה אחיו לקח 5 אנשים ויציגן לפני פרעה ויאמר פרעה אל אחיו מה מעשיכם ויאמרו אל פרעה רואי צאן עבדיך גם אנחנו גם אבותינו ויאמרו אל פרעה לגור בארץ בנו כי אין מרעה לצאן אשר לעבדיך כי כבד הרע בארץ כנען ועתה ישבו נא עבדיך בארץ גושן ויאמר פרעה אל יוסף לאמור אביך ואחיך באו אליך ארץ מצרים לפניך היא במיטב הארץ הושב את אביך ואחיך ישבו בארץ גושן ישבו בארץ גושן במידתם, יש בם אנשי חיל בשמתם, שרי מקנה על אשר לי.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yeshkoach. Fourth Aliyah, chapter 47 in Genesis, verses 7 through 10. Jacob and Pharaoh meet one another and they kind of share a moment, understanding what it's like to be an old guy, basically.
Yamdu Daniel ben Moshe Besara ben Malka Bat Malka ben Ari Lichot Re'i.
No, I'm going to because my glasses have to fog out, so... I should be invited to the site.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach, Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Vaed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayavi Yosef, and Yaakov Avivi Hamidehu Yivnei Pharaoh, Vayivarech Yaakov et Pharaoh, Vayomer Pharaoh el Yaakov, Kama Yimei Shnei Chayecha, Vayomer Yaakov el Paro Yemei Shnei Migorai Shloshim u'ma'at Shana Ma'avara'im Hayu Yemei Shnei Chayai V'lo Hisigu Et Yemei Shnei Chayei Avotai B'mei Migoreihem Vayevarech Yaakov Paro vayetze milifnei Paro.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah temet, v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
We're on chapter 47, verses 11 through 19. The next three sections are about, because of the famine, people need food, and Joseph essentially takes over the land in exchange for giving food. 11 through 19, the fifth Aliyah, that's Rabbi Gould.
Yamod Harav Abraham Yitzchak ben Yosef Lichot Chamishi.
Yosef et David v'Abraham.
Just the beginning. Baruch Adonai Hamorah. Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Amen. Vayoshev Yosef el aviv echav vayitein lahem achuza be'eretz Mitzrayim b'maytav haaretz be'eretz Ramzes ka'asher tziva paro vaykalkel Yosef et aviv echav ve'kol beit aviv lechem v'vihatah ve'lechem ein b'kol haaretz ki kaveh hara'av ve'od vatela eretz Mitzrayim ve'eretz Canaan mibnei hara vayalakeh Yosef v'kol ha'kesef hanimtza be'eretz Mitzrayim ve'eretz Canaan b'shaber asher him shomrim vayaveh Yosef et ha'kesef beit Paro Vayitom ha'kesef me'eretz Mitzrayim u'eretz Canaan vayavo kol Mitzrayim el Yosef lemor hava alanu lechem v'lama namud emdecha ki afez kasef Vayomer Yosef havu miknechem ve'enelachem v'miknechem im afez kasef Vayaviu et miknechem el Yosef vayitein lahem Yosef lechem basusim Hatzor u'mikneh habakar v'chamorim v'ayin halei balechem v'kol miknehem b'shana hi v'titom b'shana ha'u v'yavo elav Hashana v'titom Hashana hahi vayavo elav Hashana hasheni vayomlo lo nikached me'adoni ki im tam ha'kesef u'migneh ha'behema el adoni lo nishar lifnei adoni bilti im gviatenu la'amatenu Lama namud le'einecha gam anachnu gam admatenu k'nei otanu and admatenu ba'alachem v'nihyeh anachnu admatenu avadim lefaro v'tein zera v'nihyeh v'lo namud V'adama lo tesham. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah tevet chayei olam natan v'tokeinu baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yeshua. Thank you so much, Rabbi Gould, for reading Torah. Now, Avshalom Beryl is going to read number 6 and 7. 7, and after he read for his bar mitzvah 9? No. 9 years?
2012.
Yes, so 9 years ago, believe it or not. All right, and back on the land, 47 verses 20 through 22. We'll call on Jacqueline for the Aliyah.
Talmud Yalda Batnavan V'Tikva Lichvod Hamishi Shishi
Hamishi's already
Baruch Adonai Hamvora.
Baruch Adonai Hamvora.
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayken Yosef et kol admat Mitzrayim leFaro.
Et kol admat is
Et kol admat Mitzrayim leFaro ki maferu Mitzrayim yishsadehu ki chazak aleihem hara'av v'tehi haaretz leFaro ve'et ha'am ha'avir oto le'arim miksehu Mitzrayim ve'ad katsehu ra admat ha'kohanim lo kana ki chok ha'kohanim me'ei paro ve'afilu et chutam asher natan lahem paro al ken lo maferu et admatam.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Call upon Elizabeth Sims for the 7th Aliyah, chapter 47, verses 23 through 27.
Talmud, Elisheva Mavi Pada Abraham Besar Eliphod, Shvi'i.
Baruch Adonai Hamorah. Baruch Adonai Barak Leolam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'rabonu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayomer Yosef el ha'am ken kaniti etchem hayam ve'et admatechem leFaro hilachem zera uzartem et ha'adama ve'haya b'tevuot imtatem chamishit leFaro ve'arba ayado Yelachem, L'zera hasadeh, U'oflechem, V'la'asher b'vatechem, V'la'efol b'tatechem. Vayomru, Hefeitanu, Nimzachen, B'enei Adoni, V'hayinu abadim, L'Faro, V'yatzem otah, Yosef, L'chov, Ad hayom hazeh, al admat Mitzrayim, leFaro lachomesh, ra admat hakohanim levadam, lo hayta leFaro, vayeshev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen, vayeachazuha, vayivru vayirbu melod.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Please rise for the Chatzi Kaddish.
Yid Gadal, Yid Kadash Shemei Rabbi. Yamadi Rahu Teven Lefachute Bechaye Chonu Yomei Chonu Chaye Echol Yisrael. Magala Magala Tichari Viet Yibar, Viet Yishtabah, Yipar, Viet Ramah, Viet Naseh, Viet Hadar, Viet Taleh, Viet Halah, Shmei Kudishah, Ve'la, Mikol Berachata, V'shirata,
Tushechata V'nechemata, Damiram Be'oma,
V'meru,
Amen.
All right, maybe seated, and we read that last part once again. And we call upon Mark Fickus for the maftir today.
Yamod, Mar Ben Ruvain, Lifnei Maftir, Lichod Maftir.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hambolach.
Baruch Adonai
Adonai Hambolach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher b'chavanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayomru hefeyitanu nimtzachen b'nei Adoni v'hayinu avadim lefaro vayasemota Yosef lefaro at hayom hazeh al admat mitzrayim lefaro lachomesh ra admat hakohanim levadam lo hayita lefaro vayeshev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen vayachazuva vayifru vayirbu me'od.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet B'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Right, so first an inclusive blessing for all who read. Mishaber Chafetein Avram Yitzchak Sarah Karach Avaleah. Yivrechem Kol Prim Asher Alu Ayom L'Fram Kom L'Kvod HaTorah L'Kvod HaShabbat. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yivrechem Tamit Mishpachotam B'Shvat Ahavat Tzachah B'Chol Zedem Kol Shrechem V'Nomar. Amen. And for those who are ill, we're thinking today of Scott Lawrence, Dolly Bud Raisin, Barbara Rose, Lou Burrow. Definitely this year. Ilya Oak, Karina Golubat, Hadav Yehuda Tzvi, Leodi Patshena, Shabtai Dov Ben Shimon Moshe, Ray Renshaw, Albert Alter, Rosie Gurman, Yechiel Ben Eliza, Shulamit Bat Leah, Miriam Bat Yehudi, Adele Mendelson, Rina Gottschalk, Carmel Oria Bat Ariel Sara, Jackie Cohen, Yehudi Bat Miriam Baharon, and Lana Nachman, David Gubman, Eliza Bat Rav, Raphael Ben Esther, Moshe Ben Ruvain, Leo and Dot Richard, Rose Melanson. If you have any other names of those who are ill, please go ahead and say them out loud at this time. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Bekor Abraham, bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. invite you to please rise once again for Hagba and Galila. We call upon Jerry and Ann Levine.
Yamod, Magbia Tamod, Hagolelet.
V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai v'yad Moshe Eitz Chaim l'machazikim ba'avetzom v'hameushar Eitz Chaim l'machazikim ba'avetzom v'hameushar L'rachei darchei Noah V'kol b'tivotei hashalom L'rachei darchei Noah V'kol b'tivotei hashalom Yai lai lai Yai lai lai Yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 We're going to turn to page 291 now for the Haftarah. 291. This Haftarah, Ezekiel 37, 15 through 28. It's a really good one because of its importance to the future and its optimism, which basically says the tribes are going to come back together, represented by the sticks in Ezekiel's vision. This is the latter half of the Valley of the Dry Bones, Haftarah. But it's now not just that the bones are getting resurrected, they're coming together. Judah and Ephraim, the south and the north. Judah and Israel, these kingdoms will in the future come together and be one people again. So beautiful, optimistic, hopeful Haftarah. Take the good one. Absolutely, you do.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar dinim tovim v'atzah v'divrehem hanemanim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'torah u'moshe avdo U'Yisrael amo u'v'ndiei ha'emet b'tzedek V'yihi davar Adonai elai lemor ve'ata v'nadav Kaf lecha etz echad u'chtov alav Yehuda Livnei Yisrael chavechav Ukach etz echad uchtov alav Le'yosef etz Ephraim Echol Beit Yisrael chaverav Ve'kavotav echad el echad Echad etz echad V'hayu l'achadim beyadecha V'cha'asher yomru elecha B'nei amecha lemor Alo tagid lanu ma'elelach Daber alehem Amar Adonai Elohim Hinei Ani lokeach Et etz Yosef Asher b'yad Ephraim Sheveshivtei Yisrael chaverav Venatati otam alav Et Beitz Yehuda Va'asitim le'etz echad V'hayu echad b'yadi V'hayu ha'etzim Asher tichtov alehem Be'yadecha le'eneihem V'daber alehem
הנה אני לוקח את בני ישראל מבין הגויים אשר הלכו שם, וקיבצתי אותם מסביב, והבאתי אותם אל אדמתם, ועשיתי אותם לגוי אחד בארץ בהרי ישראל, ומלך אחד יהיה לכולם למלך, ולא יהיו עוד לשני גויים, ולא יחצו עוד לשני ממלכות עוד, ולא יטמאו עוד בגילוליהם ובשיקוציהם ובכל פשעיהם, והושעתי אותם מכל מושבותיהם אשר חטאו בהם, וטיהרתי אותם, והיו לי לעם, ואני אהיה להם לאלוהים. ועבדי דוד מלך עליהם, ורועה אחד יהיה לכולם, ומשפטי ילכו, וחוקותי ישמעו ועשו אותם. וישבו על הארץ אשר נתתי לעבדי ליעקב, אשר ישבו בה אבותיכם, וישבו עליה המה, ובניהם עד עולם, ודוד עבדי נשיא להם לעולם. וחרתי להם ברית שלום, ברית עולם יהיה אותם. ונתתים והרביתי אותם, ונתתי את מקדשי בתוכם לעולם. והיה משכני עליהם, והייתי להם לאלוהים, והמה יהיו לי לעם. וידעו הגויים כי אני אדוני, מקדש את ישראל, להיות מקדשי בתוכם לעולם. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך, ודבר אחד מדבריך, אחור לא ישוב ריקם. כי אל מלך נאמן ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הנאמן בכל דבר. לכם על ציון כי היא בית חיינו, ולעלובת נפש תושיע במהרה בימינו. ברוך אתה אדוני, משמח ציון בבניה. שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו, באליהו הנביא עבדך, ובמלכות בית דוד משיחך, במהרה יבוא ויקל ליבנו. על כיסאו לא ישב זר, ולא יבחלו עוד אחרים את כבודו. כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לו, שלא יכפנהו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן דוד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הדין ועל יום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך לפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת. So much work. Right, a couple of additional prayers today. The prayer for our country is on page 223. 223, back in here. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask you to bless our country, its government, its leaders, its citizens, and its land. We offer a prayer of gratitude for the precious gift of living in a land blessed, sublime physical beauty, individual freedom, economic abundance, and a rich, magnificent history. We offer a prayer of thanksgiving for those who came before us, those whose sacrifices created a strong and vibrant nation. We acknowledge that there are those in our country who are suffering as well. We offer a prayer of hope for those whose cups are empty, for those whose freedoms have been curtailed, and for those who have not been able to share fully in all our country's blessings. We offer a prayer of support for the leaders of our government, understanding that leading a nation with such diversity and freedom is a difficult and daunting task. We offer a prayer of action for the citizens of our nation, that we may understand our obligation to be involved in making our country a better place for all who live here. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask you to bless our country, its government, its leaders, its citizens, and its land. And let us say, Amen. In Hebrew, prayer for the state of Israel, Avinu Shabashamayim, Shor Yisrael Go'alo, Barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Gebulatenu, Agen Aleha, Be'evrat Chastecha, Ufros Aleha, Sukat Shlomecha, Ushlach Orcha, Ve'amitecha, L'Rashea, Sarea, Ve'atzea, Ve'takmen Be'etza Tova, Milfanecha, Chazek et Yidei Midnei Eretz Kodshenu, V'hanchi Lem Eloheinu Yeshua, Ve'ateret Mitzachon Te'atrem, Ve'atata Shalom Ba'aretz, V'tzimchat Olam Ve'ashvea, Ve'nomar, Amen. Ashrei, page 231. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, Od Yalu Chasela. Tziva LeDavid, Mincha LaHamelech, Baruch Shimcha Le'olam Va'ed. Taron La'am Le'o, Glugu L'To'en Cheker. Adar Kevododecha, V'divrei Niflotecha Asicha. Zecher Av Tuvcha Yabiu, V'tzidkatecha Yiranenu. Tovna L'Kol, Rachamav Al Kol Ma'asav. Kevo Malchutcha Yomeru, V'ratecha Yedaberu. Malchutcha Malchut Kol Olamim, V'memshaltecha B'chol Dor V'ador. Einechol Lecha Yisaberu, V'atanaten Lahem Et Ochlam Be'ito. Tzadik Adonai B'chol Dorachav, V'chasi B'chol Ma'asav. V'tzon Yerav Ya'aseh, V'et Shavatam Yishma V'yoshiem. Tilat Naidaber Pi, V'varech Kol Basar, Shem Kodsho Le'olam Va'ed. V'anachnu Nivarech Yah. Hallelujah. We rise for the return of the Sefer Torah to the Ark. Call upon our Ark openers, Torah carrier, once again. And we're going to try it again. We're going to try the Hakafa. When it comes near you, don't touch it or kiss it. Hold up your talit fringe, if you have one, or prayer book. Galu et Shem Adonai, Kniskav Shemo Levato, Odo Aleret V'Shamayim, V'Yamaret Keret Le'amo, Tehillah Lechol Chasidav, Livnei Yisrael Am Kirovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Mizmor LeDavid, Avu Ladonai B'Ne'elim, Avu Ladonai Kavod Ma'oz, Avu Ladonai Kevod Shemo, Yishtar Avu Ladonai B'Hadron Kodesh, Kol Na'al Hamayim Kavod Mirim, Adonai Hamayim Rabim. Kol Adonai Behadar, Kol Adonai Shover Harazim, Vaishaber Adonai El Arze Halbanon, Yerknim Kemoeg Elvanon B'Sirion, Kemo Ben Re'imim, Kol Adonai Kotzef Labonesh, Kol Adonai Yachil Midbar, Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh, Kol Adonai Yechol El Hayalot, Bechasof Yarod Bechalo, Kulo Mer Kavod, Adonai Lamahu Yah, Shamayim Shem Adonai Leolam, Adonai Oz Le'ano Yitain, Adonai Yivarech Et Amo V'Shalom, U'Nucho Yomar. Ki lekach tov natati lachem torati al ta'azovu et ha'im hi le'machazikim ba le'tomcheha me'ushar dirachei darchei noam le'chol netivoteha shalom. Adonai, Elecha Benashuva, Kadesh, Kadesh Yameinu, Kadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Amen. You may be seated. Right, so we have a party trick in our family that a lot of people have the same party trick, which is we go to some place and we say, "Where are you from?" And they'll say, "I'm from Boston," let's say. And so we'll say, "Well, are you from Brookline or are you from Newton?" Right? And or they'll say they're from Cleveland. We'll say, "Are you from Shaker Heights or Pepper Pike?" Depending on their age. And nowadays we would say, "Are you from Solon?" Right? So all these things, it happens in foreign countries too, right? England, Golders Green. Paris, Le Marais. And in many other cities across the world, there was always there was a Jewish quarter. Historically, in many places, at one time even a ghetto. And I'm not talking about the Holocaust ghetto. I'm talking about like the Jewish neighborhood in Venice. But you know what city never really had one? Oakland, San Francisco. Right? The Bay Area never really had that. The party trick doesn't work. Although, of course, we know the Bay Area so well. We could go through 25 cities, and so eventually we'll probably get to where the family might be from. But this is something we like to do in our family, and then we start the Jewish geography game and figure out who we know. And people still fall for it. How'd you know? It wasn't that hard to tell. All right. In any case, we're introduced to this concept in this week's parashah. Where are you from? Cairo. Are you from Goshen? Of course, because that was the first Jewish suburb. We settled in Goshen. Last week in the Torah portion, we learned that Egyptians did not like the way Jews ate. And this week, it works out for both parties, right? We don't want to live exactly with Egyptians. Egyptians don't exactly want to live with us. Oh, by the way, I digress, but one other city it doesn't work for. It doesn't work for New York. Too many Jewish suburbs, right? Could be anywhere. In any case, so we have this whole thing about the settling in Goshen. Avshi's bar mitzvah portion, he's going to actually know the three things that I'm going to say to begin with. Why, in particular, Goshen? The Torah gives us what we call the pshat reason, right? The plain, simple meaning of the text, which is basically, we're shepherds. We want the best land to graze on for our sheep, so it works out for us. The Egyptians think shepherds are gross and don't really want us near them. And as you saw, Joseph strategizes to make sure we end up with this particular piece of land. And so it works out for both parties. And that's what the Torah says is the reason. What does the professor say is the reason? The professor says it's history looking backward. The Jews were in that part of Egypt, the northern part, which is closest to Israel/Canaan. And this was also where the Hyksos dynasty was headquartered. And the Hyksos dynasty were non-native Egyptians who ran Egypt for a time. And then a nativist movement took over, and out went the Hyksos and probably any other peoples who were attached to them, like us. Exodus, etc. Nativist movements tend to come up in many societies, and that's what happens. They didn't like these foreign rulers. And this Hyksos dynasty is what actually makes it plausible for someone like Joseph to come to power, an outsider. But that's what the professor says. What do the rabbis say? Well, it has to do with assimilation. We wanted to keep Jewish culture strong. We hang out in Cairo, we're going to do what the Cairo folks do, the big city people do. Commentary called the Ha'emek Devar puts this really well, where it says it was in this way that Joseph contrived matters to achieve the goal that they would dwell apart, even if it involved degrading his family in the eyes of Pharaoh. Everything was worth sacrificing in order to ensure the preservation of Israel's sanctity. So you've got the Torah pshat reason, you've got the professor's reason, and you have the rabbi's reason. Now, throughout most of Jewish history, we have essentially done the same thing. Hence the beginning with my Jewish geography lesson. And I don't mean, well, yeah, it's a Jewish geography lesson on multiple levels. Now, this was forced upon us in most places of the world, right? We didn't necessarily choose it. It was just forced upon us. Now, I did mention that the Bay Area doesn't really have this because we're spread out and we're everywhere. Most Jewish Bay Area residents prefer it this way and like it this way. Like everything else, there are good and bad parts about it. We are also the most assimilated Jewish community in the country. We are the third largest Jewish community in the country, but we don't exactly act like it. But, so we are more assimilated, but we can also, that's the negative side, we could also say we're better integrated in the community and always have been. Like most things, pluses and minuses. But I've been giving this whole idea a lot of thought lately. Assimilation, integration, for three reasons. Number one, we just went through Hanukkah, which in addition to stories about being the Maccabees, the Jews against the Syrians/Greeks/Seleucids, is also, to some extent, a fight over how much we're supposed to assimilate into the dominant Hellenistic culture between Jews. Second reason I've been thinking about it is I went to a really, really interesting online talk sponsored by Congregation Beth Shalom in San Francisco. Beth Shalom is the, sort of the, I guess it was the first conservative synagogue in the Bay Area, at least I believe it was. It was definitely the sort of mothership of conservative synagogues in the Bay Area for a long time. And it was an online talk about not their founding rabbi, but their most famous rabbi, Rabbi Saul White. And Rabbi Saul White, according to the lecturer, which is Fred Rosenbaum, who knows more about Bay Area Jewish history than any person who just does, he's a fabulous teacher, he actually believes he is the most influential rabbi in Bay Area history. The most. And why so? This was mostly a talk about how Rabbi White was the first prominent non-assimilationist rabbi here in the Bay Area. He did not speak about integrating with the community. He spoke about being proud of being a Jewish community, which sounds, okay, so what? That's what rabbis do. Not in San Francisco in, the 20th century, or at least the first part of the 20th century, and up until about 1960. Rabbi Saul White took on the German Jews of Temple Emmanuel, of the Federation, the money, the anti-Zionists, because in fact San Francisco had the largest chapter of what's called the American Council for Judaism. We're talking about like 1940, in the midst of the Holocaust, Jews dying. The Jewish community believed that the American Council for Judaism talked about how America is our Zion, and it was a shanda, and we'd be accused of dual loyalty, and all these things. It was founded in Houston, Texas, but we had the largest chapter, and it was prominently led by many of the German Jews, specifically of the city of San Francisco. And Saul White took them on full force. He wrote an editorial almost every week, right? It was really a column that he had, and he talked about it nearly every week for a couple of years in what eventually became the J, what we call the J Weekly today, called the Northern California Jewish Bulletin. At one point, I think, during Saul White's time, it had yet a different name. So, he took them on, and he told people that we should be passionate about our Judaism, we should be strong about our Judaism, we shouldn't be embarrassed by our Judaism, and he was passionate and even mean about it. So, that was his influence, and it was a whole different mindset for the Bay Area Jewish community. And as an aside, we have several descendants of Rabbi Saul White in our congregation, some of whom are named White, some of whom are named Michaels, some of whom are on their way to be joining the congregation, and Saul White, Rabbi Saul White, also married my mom and dad in 1959. That's the second reason. The third reason is because I just read this book, People Love Dead Jews by Dara Horn. Who's heard of this book? I'm sure several. Okay, very good. So Dara Horn is famous for her fiction, and she writes fabulous fiction. Is People the book hers? No, which one is that? What's her most famous one? Is someone's gonna? It's not this one. No. Oh yeah, true. Okay, good point. Author of 5 novels. Come on. Anyway, and there are people watching on the stream, yelling at the screen the title. My favorite of hers is actually The Guide to the Perplexed, which has something to do with Maimonides' philosophical work by the same name. It involves a startup and the internet and coding, and it's phenomenal. But this other one, which I can't name, is the most famous. This is a nonfiction book, and it is about what it sounds like, but it's also about a whole bunch of other things as well. I would almost say it's her ramblings about the current state of Judaism and anti-Semitism, both, but it's not really rambling, because she's just a really, really good writer, and it's fun to read. It's very stimulating. You're not going to agree with all of her premises, but it really makes you think. The part about the dead Jews, just just that part I will explain, which basically is the idea that the world isn't anti-Semitic so much if the Jews are dead. In fact, they love dead Jews, and much more than living Jews. Like Anne Frank, for instance. Or all these cities who have these Jewish heritage sites and tours. I mean, I remember I was, before actually Jews were so much moving back to Poland, and they're not that much there anyway. They're these they restored part of the Jewish quarter. There's this restaurant where they're singing in terrible Hebrew, all these Hebrew songs. None of the people are Jewish, but they're trying to stimulate or simulate what Judaism was like, back pre-Holocaust in Poland. And we have this in places like Spain and Morocco and China, and there's a whole chapter on Harbin, which is like the China-Russia border, and they have all these sites that they glorify. But it's not in most of these places? Living Jews, or at least very many of them. And then she talks about, it doesn't matter whether we're in separate communities, like in Eastern Europe, North Africa, or China, or whether we assimilate well, like Germany or Spain. It doesn't matter whether the country goes right-wing fascist or left-wing communist. In the end, we usually either get kicked out or killed. It's true of places where we completely disavow our Judaism, as well as places where we take on the culture and philosophy of the host culture, like Spain, where we took on the philosophy, or the opposite, Soviet Union, where we disavowed religion completely, where we were the very best communists and artists and were working and recruited by Stalin on behalf of the state, and virtually all of them were killed by Stalin. But the most fascinating chapter, and I'm doing a little rambling myself here, just going from place to place like she did, is her chapter on Ellis Island and what is really the myth of Ellis Island, right? We all grew up thinking that our names were changed at Ellis Island, they couldn't translate them, we couldn't speak them. According to her very well-documented and extensive research, it's a myth. The ship's manifests had most of the names on them. The interviews there were like 6 hours. They had all kinds of foreign language speakers there. But wait, my grandma wouldn't lie. Really? I mean, at least one of my grandmothers, we have no idea what year she was born. She was born alternatively in England or on a ship, really. There's a lot of mythology. And in fact, 65% of the applications for name changes in New York were by Jews. We changed our names, mostly to assimilate, but not necessarily to leave Judaism, but so we could earn a living or rent an apartment. Petitions and court filings actually show that Jews changed their names, and they said under oath, because I cannot find a job, or because my children are being humiliated or discriminated against at school, or because with their real names no one will hire them, because essentially American anti-Semitism prevented their family's success. But most of them, in that period, the Ellis Island period, were white Ashkenazi Jews and could easily pass if they had their names changed and they learned English, which other minorities were unable to do. Then there's more anti-Semitism and our inability to assimilate, even if we want to. She talks about Pittsburgh and Poway and New York, New Jersey, and all the anti-Semitic acts over the last couple of years, which, interestingly enough, it's really actually very sad. When all that violence was occurring, Pittsburgh and Poway were one thing, and we had all kinds of support and help and attention. When the violence was happening in the New York, New Jersey area, basically reporting said, well, there's gentrification and there's tension, which in the places where it was happening was not even true, actually. It's just a narrative that was out there. Again, dead Jews? Fine. Living Jews? Not so much. So what is her actual answer? Her final chapter is basically study Talmud. Really. Return to tradition. Kind of the Saul White approach. Be proud. And I'm going to close, I'm going to close with her words. As part of her return tradition, she's taken on the Daf Yomi, which is the daily study of Talmud. You're still going strong? The Goulds? Excellent. A lot of people start it and don't finish it, but she's also really strong on it. She's loving it. And this is what she says. I'm going to conclude with her words. And before I do that, I do highly recommend this book, and not because you're going to agree with everything in it. You are not. She's all over the place, but it's really a wonderful book for making you think, and she writes well, which always is a plus for me. You don't have to struggle to read every word. Here she goes. The sages obsess over how to disagree without humiliating others. One announces that it's preferable to enter a fiery furnace than to embarrass another person in public. I studied these passages as the news blared with the presidential impeachment trial. Our public life a sickening spectacle of corruption and insult, with no interest in reconciliation or even integrity. There are ways to build a broken world, and they require humility and empathy. A constant awareness that no one is better than anyone else. That constant awareness requires practice, vigilance, being up at all the watches, which is a reference actually to the opening passages of Talmud Brachot, what time you say the Shema. I still follow today's old news. That's a reference to anti-Semitism. But now I also turn away from it toward the ancient, meaning our sacred texts. Shabbat Shalom. All right, we are going to finish off the service with our Musaf, led by Tamar Brines. Please rise, page 239.
Yitgadal v'yitgada Shemei Rabbi Ve'amad yivrach ruteh v'yamlich malchuteh V'chayechon yomechon Uvchayetecho beit Yisrael Ba'agala Uvizman karim v'yimeru Amen Yehi Shemei Rabbi mevorach Le'olam Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei kudashah le'elam yinkol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'yimeru Amen Adonai Sefatai Tivtach Ufia Yitehilatecha Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor HaMenorah El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Mekonei Hakol V'zoher Yatzei Avot Umevi Goel Livnei Bneihem Leman Shalom Le'ava Melech Kozer U'Mashiach U'Magin Baruch Atah Adonai Magin Avraham V'Chokei Tzara Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayim Eitim Atara V'Hoshia Mashiach HaRuach V'Bukhat Hashem Mechakel Chayim B'Chesed Mechayim Eitim B'Rachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Mechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman Ata L'Hachayot Metim Baruch Ata Adonai Mechaye HaMetim Na'aritzecha v'na'akdishecha Kesod tziyah Sarvei Kodesh Ha'akdishim Shimcha ba'kodesh Kakatu al yad b'yecha V'karazeh azeh b'omar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzebaot Melech ha'aretz Kivodo Kivodo malei olam Mishar tav sholim ze lazer Ayim mekam kivodo Lumatam baruch yomeru Baruch kivod Adonai Mimkomo hu yifen berachamim Vayachon am yachadim shemo Erev v'boker bechol yom tamid Hamayim be'ahava shema omrim Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Hu Eloheinu Hu Avinu Hu Malkeinu Hu Moshkeinu Ve'hu Yashmeinu Berachamav Shemi B'nei Kol Chai Shemi B'nei Kol Chai Liot Lahem Elohim Udivrei Kodecha Katuv Lemor Adonai Le'olam B'Ha'et Zion L'dor v'dor Hallelujah L'dor v'dor Nagid Godlecha U'lenetzach Netachim Kedushatecha Nagdish V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu li'umishtei olam va'ed Ki HaMelech Gadol v'Kadosh Atah Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
We continue on our own, pages 247 through 258.
Oseh shalom biramav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru.
Amen.
Kaddish Shalem, page 259. Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbi.
Amen.
Ve'amati rachute ve'amlich malchute. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayedecho be'Yisrael. V'agalav b'zman kariv v'yimeru.
Amen.
Ve'yishmei Rabbi mevorach. Le'olam lo e'amaya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishabach v'yipar v'yitramam v'naseh. V'tadar v'taleh v'talah shemei kudesha. Ve'elam min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'ne'amata damiran ve'ama v'yimeru.
Amen.
Titkabal sotachon v'otachon d'chol Yisrael. Kodama v'hondi v'shma v'yimeru.
Amen.
Yehesh lama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mramav v'yaseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru.
Amen.
The actual junior congregation is still going on, so there's even more people here. What? Okay. Ein Eloheinu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Kadonenu, Mi Kemalkeinu, Mi Kemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Emalkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shektiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha et Ketoret Asami. Please rise to the Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adam l'makol, l'atefila l'yotzer v'reshit, shelo asanu v'yeh haratzot, shelo zamanu mishpot ha'adam, shelo zamanu v'ahem, v'ro rachenu v'yechol ha'olam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishaparim u'kotim, v'nei melech malkei hamlachim, v'akadosh baruch hu, she'enu notei shamayim v'yesed haaretz, u'moshe mikara b'shamayim b'ma'ah, u'shrinatu zo, v'kavei meroim, u'eloheinu einot, eloheinu echesulato, rakatu v'torato, v'datayom v'hashevotah, elevavecha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim imaha, ve'al haaretz v'itahat einaveinu.
Katu b'toratacha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed.
Seated as we lovingly recall the memory of our departed relatives and friends whose yortzites we observe during the coming week, thinking especially today of Sheldon Bereskin, Jacob Bernstein, Miriam Pepin Dahan, Rose Dancer, Nathan Denenberg, Ruth Eisenman, Lena Fass, Alfred Feldhammer, Lima Frankel German, Harold Charles Goldberg, Max Gross, Irving Gretman, Doris Held, George Hockman, Helen Holloman, Irene Kahn, Meyer Kranz, David Lazar, Yetta Laserwitz Miller, Mark Leon, Richard Mailman, Minette Mogul, my maternal grandfather Ben Nathan, Philip Nathanson, Rabbi Chaim Goran Perlmuir, the Ramick family, Sarah Libby Wright, Abby Rockmaker, Rose Rosenberg, Sally Simon, Goldie Steinberg, Norman Stone, Michael Wallerstein, Herman Zubkoff. We're in the Shloshim for Sid Horowitz, Marie Lorenz, Martin Rosenthal, Michael Rappaport, and we are in the Shiva for Sidney Gordon, the father of Jonathan Gordon, and Shirley Friarman, the mother of Matthew Friarman. Our thoughts are certainly with you, Matthew and Carolyn. Memories of all who are with us, we ask all those who are mourning or observing yortzeit, as well as anyone else who would choose to do so, to rise for the Mourner's Kaddish on page 267. Yit Gadal V'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah V'Almad Yivrach Yerutei V'Yamlich Malchutei V'Chayechon V'Yomechon V'Chayechon Beit Yisrael V'Galav Yizman Karim V'Imru Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam L'Omeid Maya Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitba'ar V'Yitramam V'Yitnasei V'Yitadar V'Yitaleh V'Yitalal Shmei Kudsha V'Arihu Le'ela Min Kol Berchata V'Shirata Tushbechata V'Nechemata Tamiran V'Alma V'Imru Amen Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen Oseh Shalom B'Mroma Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen In the memory of the people you come to say Kaddish for, be blessed to you always. Let us say Amen. Okay, a few announcements. First of all, the other book was The World to Come. That's what Dara Horn's preliminary famous novel is. But this is one I talked about today. People love dead Jews. All right, a big thank you to our service leaders, Jonah Bloom and Tamar Brinus. Thank you so much. And our Torah readers, Rabbi Art Gould and Avshalom Beryl, and our Haftorah reader, Mark Fickus. Thank you to all of you for making our service really nice today. Greatly appreciated. Let's see. We have, despite what it says on the bulletin, there is no mahjong today. Karen is in New Jersey at the moment, so. Oh, you're doing it anyway? Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. You have the set? You have what you need?
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected. If you want to play mahjong, see Deborah Hoffman-Wade. And probably Charles Feldman.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. We have, and what else do we have? Well, we've got Morning Minyan, Monday and Thursday. We've got weekly text study, 9 a.m. Rockies Brooklyn Basin. It is covered there, so even if it's raining, we can still study there outside and eat at the same time. TBA Film Club, December 19th, Sunday. The movie is On the Map. And I don't know, that's probably about all I have for now. Am I missing anything? Okay. Oh, but actually I'm missing the most important thing, which is I need 4 volunteers to help serve the food when we go down for Kiddush lunch. Okay. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, thank you so much. So when we do Kiddush, you can head down there, and we really appreciate it. Eliza really appreciates it. Middle Eastern style food today, I assume, just because that's Eliza's specialty. So, anyway, we are going to conclude with Adon Olam, which I'll move back here. Page 269. Right, no cups Adon Olam today, right? Okay. All right. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li'et nasa v'chefzo kol azai melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kiklot hakol levado yimloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu hovel ve'hu yiyeh b'tifara ve'hu echad ve'en sheni lehamshilo leachbira ve'li reshit ve'li tachlit ve'lo ha'oz ve'ham yisra ve'hu heli ve'chai go'ali ve'tzor chevli ve'et zara ve'hu nisi umanos li ve'nan kosi ve'yom ekra ve'ado achki bruchi ve'en ishan ve'ahira ve'in bruchi gevi'ati Adonai li ve'lo ira. Shabbat Shalom. Please rise for Kiddush. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam b'rikolam b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam b'rikolam Adonai et Hashemayim ve'et ha'aretz v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam b'rikolam u'yom Shabbat ve'nafal Shabbat v'yinafash v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et Al Ken Rakatay, Yom HaShabbat Ve'ekat Sheu, Savri, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu V'chalam Borei, B'rei HaGafen. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu V'chalam, Hamotzi Lechem Min Ha'arech. B'tei Avon, see you downstairs.